Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about 9 signs that you might be in a codependent relationship. Before we get into this topic, I want to give you some foundational information on what is codependence. So there are different ways to describe what codependency is, but in a nutshell, I'm going to explain it this way. Codependency is when you put another person's needs before yourself, even to the detriment of yourself. When you love someone else more than you love yourself, but even to the point where it's detrimental to your health, to your mental health, or to your children's health and mental health, or to your progress. So there are times in life where we will put other people before ourselves, such as our children in case of an emergency. There's different situations where we do put others before us, where we do seem to love others more than we love ourselves. And I guess the best example of that I have is with our children, the way that we are with our children. However, in codependency, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about in codependency is when you have a pattern and a way of being in relationships where you consistently put others before yourself, even when it hurts you, even when it goes against your values and it goes against your truth, what you believe in, or what's right for you. And the other thing about this is that you do it in order to people please. You do it because of your abandonment wound and your fear of losing people, of getting people upset, of them not validating you, of them turning against you. So you're doing it not really out of a place of love, but you're doing it out of a place of fear. The other thing I want you to understand about codependency is that we are not born codependent. We are reinforced to become people with codependent traits and codependent ways of being. And when I say codependent ways of being, I'm really speaking of codependent ways of surviving and getting our needs met. Those needs could be very basic needs, such as food, shelter, safety, but it could also be for our needs for love, connection, and having some type of a meaningful relationship. However, codependency, people pleasing, enabling, and these behaviors will not give you a meaningful relationship. It'll give you what you normally hear called a toxic relationship. It'll give you a relationship where it's out of balance. It's only really serving in one direction, and the only thing you're getting are the breadcrumbs of love. But for the most part, you're really constantly performing in order to receive the love you so desire. These patterns and ways of being are birthed in our childhood. In our childhood, when we either had to perform or we had to block who we really are, we had to block our truth, and we had to become whoever we needed to become in our environment, in our home with our parents and our family, for 2 reasons. One is we needed to become whatever they wanted first in order for us to survive, for our safety. And number 2 would be in order for us to connect with our family, with our parents, and to receive some type of love from them. Usually, this happens in families where there is narcissistic parenting, very strict parenting, very contingency-based type of parenting based off our performance, or it could happen in households where there's a lot of abuse. And so in order to survive, we suppress who we truly are, what our real desires are, what our real needs are, what our real values are, because we're too busy trying to survive. Now let's get into it. Let's get into the 9 signs that you might be in a codependent relationship. The number 1 sign that you are in a codependent relationship is that there are a lack of boundaries. You find it challenging to say no, and you often feel responsible for the other person's feelings, behaviors. In other words, making them happy, making them not mad. You find yourself constantly in a situation like that, and then that is your way of crossing boundaries, but at the same time, you also allow for others to cross boundaries with you in terms of their emotionality, their demands on you, the way that they behave that may be very disrespectful, may not really reflect what your worth is, and you continue to put up with it over and over again. And this lack of boundaries causes you to give not 100 chances, but 101, 110, 200 chances, so many chances to where you don't even know anymore, like how many more chances are you going to give? And that in itself is a lack of boundaries. You have difficulty drawing the line in the sand. Maybe you even make excuses for them. Maybe you understand them so much and you have so much empathy for them, you get stuck in rationalizing that because maybe they went through trauma, or maybe you're the one that made them mad, so you start rationalizing why it's okay for them to do what they do, feel what they feel, think what they think, or treat you in the way that they are treating you. So then you don't have boundaries, so you don't stop them from treating you in the way that you know that you don't deserve to be treated. This could mean that your self-worth might be heavily dependent on your ability to meet their needs, blurring the lines between you helping them or you enabling them. So at the core of codependency is the strongest sign is a lack of boundaries. Number two is low self-esteem. You might struggle with feelings of not being good enough. Maybe you feel like you even deserve the treatment that you're receiving. You rely on the approval of others. You're constantly looking for validation from the person that you're with. And a codependent relationship doesn't only have to be in a romantic relationship. It could also be in your relationship with your parents, because that's where it began. It could be in your relationship with a lot of people, or maybe just about everyone, because once you develop this pattern, then it generalizes into all types of friendships and relationships. So low self-esteem means that you don't have the confidence to feel like your ideas are worthy, or that your decisions are a good decision. You're constantly second guessing yourself. You're not sure. So it's a constant feeling of overwhelm, not sure, confusion. So what happens when you feel that way is that you're stuck and you hesitate to make decisions. Perhaps you even procrastinate and don't do what you need to do. Perhaps you're stuck even in a type of idea or a decision that you need to make, and you're stuck in that decision for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, even longer. So those are all symptoms of low self-esteem. And low self-esteem really is just a reflection of not having confidence in yourself. And granted, sometimes being in these relationships, we do lose confidence. We do lose complete confidence in who we are. They, usually when we're in relationships with people who are narcissistic, or people that we draw to ourselves and we attract because of our codependency, it's usually someone with strong personality disorders, very demanding people, very critical people who gaslight us, people who make us feel crazy. So when you're with someone like that who's gaslighting you, making you feel crazy, questioning your reality, of course you're going to lack confidence. And if you're someone who this has happened to your whole life, maybe you were in a home where this is what your parents did, and now you're in a romantic relationship where your partner is also doing it, you really know no other way to be in a relationship. So you fall into these situations where the other person is constantly in charge of the decisions that you need to make for your life. It's really out of balance, and we really would need to work on that so that you can start gaining the confidence that you need to live your life. Because I'll just say right now, the cure to codependency is for you to live your life, for you to live your life fully. And in order for you to live your life fully, you need the confidence to be able to do that. And confidence is built little by little, one step at a time, like in a staircase. It is built one step at a time. You don't just jump into full confidence, but you would have to start trusting yourself to start building that confidence. Number 3 is people-pleasing behaviors. And all of these sort of overlap, but people-pleasing behaviors is key to codependency. You're constantly trying to make the other person happy. This is part of you taking responsibility for the other person's happiness, for the other person's mistakes. And these are all things, again, that we learn in our childhood. Perhaps we were scapegoated as children. Perhaps as children, you had a parent who was abusive, or maybe was a raging type of parent, or maybe you had a parent who was very immature, or maybe you had a parent with substance abuse or alcoholism. All of these different situations cause us to become people pleasers. It causes us to put other people's problems, mistakes, issues before our own. And it sort of bleeds into another one that we're going to be speaking of, which is enabling. But people pleasing is very much tied into enabling. You may go to great lengths to please your partner, often to the expense of your own needs or your own desires or even your own values. This could stem from a fear of rejection, a fear of abandonment because you've been abandoned so much in your life. You actually may be a people pleaser because you're trying to actually avoid abandonment. You're trying to avoid for them to get so angry because in your mind that might equal that they're going to leave you. And then what's going to happen if you're left all alone? What's going to happen if the person you're with stonewalls you and ignores you for a week or 2 weeks? Because that's another tactic that they also use. So in order to avoid the pain of that experience, or avoid the pain of imagining that you'll be abandoned by them, then you start people pleasing at your own expense, which that is the key. The key is that all these things that we're talking about today, all these 9 points, are all done at our expense. All right, number 4 is caretaking to an extreme. Caretaking to an extreme is very much tied to enabling as well. That means that we care so much for the other person that we might clean up their messes. If we're someone who is an alcoholic or who uses substances, for example, and they pass out, throw up, or they they can't go to work the next day, someone who does caretaking to an extreme will clean up after that person, will call that person's job in life for them and say that they're sick. So that will be caretaking to an extreme. And in reality, what we're doing is that we're robbing them of their healing. We're robbing them of them being able to be accountable for their own life and be accountable to take responsibility for the mistakes that they make, grow up, mature, all of this. So while we think that we're helping them by caretaking or by enabling, what we're really doing is stunting their growth and stunting our own growth, which then becomes what you hear is a toxic relationship. This becomes a very toxic relationship where there's really no way out. The only way out of this is to set boundaries, which is exactly the point of fear for someone with codependency is, how am I going to set boundaries? Because I know if I set boundaries, I'm going to lose this person. So they all whirl around together. All these 9 that we're going to be talking about, they sort of all mesh and go together. And if you're someone who has codependency, someone who has maybe some of these traits, or you might recognize some of these traits in your relationship, I just want you to, to understand that there is a way out. I myself call myself a codependent in recovery. And I've gone through so many of these signs and symptoms, and I've worked hard in my healing journey. So I'm not just a therapist. This is my specialty area because I'm not just a therapist. I'm actually someone who's also on my recovery journey. I'm on my healing journey. I'm in my transformational growth journey. And I believe in you. I believe that you could also get past this. You could also get past this, get past your fears, because what really anchors us into becoming really severely codependent is fear. Fear of losing the people that we have in our life, fear of losing those connections, which aren't even really meaningful relationships. They feel powerful, they feel very emotional, but they're not meaningful in a functional way that leads to growth, to abundance, to well-being. They're very powerful in the other direction, which leads to sickness, which leads to poor health, poor mental health, to further destruction of the family, especially if you have children. So I want you to keep all of this in mind as we continue to go. So we were on caretaking to the extreme. You might find yourself constantly sacrificing your own needs to take care of your partner's needs. You might even secretly feel some sense of resentment, but you never dare to express it. And if you express it, you probably retract really quick. And you usually do this even when it's not reciprocated or even appreciated. So you might do this even when your partner or your mother or your child or your friend doesn't even do the same for you. You might be that person that listens to your friends or your partners, all their problems, and helps them out, but they're never really there for you. That's what we're talking about here. Or even worse, you are the person that's there for everyone and they don't even appreciate you. Instead, they actually abuse you. And by abuse, I mean physical abuse, I mean sexual abuse, I mean psychological and emotional abuse. This is what I mean by abuse. You might be doing this for people who don't value you, they don't reciprocate, and they don't even care about your well-being while you're sitting here taking care of them. Number 5 is difficulty communicating. What I'm talking about here is difficulty expressing your own wants, your own needs, your own desires, your own thoughts, your own feelings, all of that. Difficulty expressing all of that, again, because of fear. And it could also be because you're not even aware of who you really are. You're not even aware of what your true values are. You're confused because you adopt everyone else's values, you adopt everyone else's thoughts, and you make them right before making yourself right. You don't validate yourself. And this, of course, guys, we were not born like this. We were born so powerful, but we become like this when our parents don't validate us, when our parents don't care about what we think, what we prefer, what we feel, what we want. There isn't even any space for that. That doesn't allow us to get to know ourselves. That doesn't allow us to have firm roots in who we are, what we desire, what our values are, or any of that. So it's so important for us to connect to who we truly are and to our core self. This is part of our healing journey from codependency, is to get to know ourselves and value ourselves and our opinions and our preferences as much as we value theirs. So it's not that their opinions don't matter. It's not that their feelings don't matter and what they want doesn't matter, but it's that what we want, what we desire, what we feel is also valuable, and it's also something that needs to be taken into account. And if you're in a relationship where you're the codependent one, and perhaps you're with someone who has very strong narcissistic traits, there might not be a lot of space for what you think, for what you feel, for your opinions, or even for your input. You might be the type of person who says yes when you really mean no. You might agree to things because you're so used to being agreeable, you don't even know how to say no anymore. You don't even know how to say, well, I prefer this. So a big part of healing from codependency is learning assertive communication. It means not being passive on this end and allowing everything in the world to happen without you speaking. And it also doesn't mean being on this end and only speaking when you can't take it anymore and you're exploding and you're having a panic attack, you're screaming, you're crying, you're begging. So it's neither one of those. Assertive communication is standing firm in who you are and expressing your wants, your needs, and your desires as an adult, expressing it as someone that sure of who you are. Of course, that bleeds into the self-esteem part where we need to have the confidence to be able to do this. So healing from codependency also include developing effective communication skills, and those are skills, and we could learn skills. You might not know how to do it right now, but you could learn the skills to express yourself better and have better and more positive relationships for yourself. Poor communication skills could lead to a pattern of you suppressing your own voice and just to maintain the peace in the relationship. So if you're the person who avoids conflict, if you're the peacemaker, if you're the person that shushes everyone because we don't want to make him mad, if you're that person, then this you're the person who I'm speaking to. I'm speaking to you here. I'm letting you know that this is a codependent trait, but it is a trait that we learned, and that it's not about us unlearning it, it's about us learning new skills so that we could be more effective in our life. Number 6 is fear of abandonment. Beneath everything that we're talking about here tonight is fear of abandonment. The reason why we became codependent, a lot of it has to do with feeling abandoned, being abandoned literally by literally being neglected and abandoned, or we could experience the feeling of being abandoned. And if anyone here is listening, if you're listening and you are someone who experienced sexual abuse, physical abuse, you witnessed domestic violence in your home, you were in any way abused, if in any way you experienced some of the ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences, if you experience these things, you could have experienced abandonment. It could leave you with a feeling that you're left alone, there's no one coming to get you, and you're just simply abandoned and left to fend for yourself. And that, for a child, that is so terrifying. It leaves an abandonment wound. And that abandonment wound is all about fear of abandonment, fear of anything that looks or smells or sounds like abandonment, even a disagreement. could feel like abandonment for an individual who has this fear. So what drives codependency is fear of abandonment. The other side of fear of abandonment is the need for connection. So sometimes it doesn't feel like abandonment, but it feels like I need to connect. I feel so good when I'm seen and heard. I feel so good when finally he or she is paying attention to me. Finally, he or she is listening to what I have to say and validating me. And a lot of times in these relationships, it's not that we don't receive that, it's that we only receive it like sprinkles in the year. And it's not a consistent behavior on the part of the other, but that's a whole other topic. But fear of abandonment is number 6, and fear of abandonment could make you become very clingy, very desperate, have panic attacks. It could make you beg. It could make you overspeak. It could make you overspeak in times of conflict because you just want the other person to fully understand you. So you start speaking really fast, and you start speaking more and more and more, and so much and so much. And that is a clingy behavior, but it's really just your desperation to be heard and seen and validated. So I want you to understand that's where that's coming from. And I also want you to have some self-compassion for yourself, because in those moments, the person that is showing up is your inner child. And in that moment, you might not even realize it, but you're probably having an emotional flashback from this very old feeling that you had way back when maybe you were 5, 10, 12, and you don't even recognize that that's the reason why you're so triggered right now. And that's the reason why you become so highly emotional and behave in ways that you even question, where did that come from? Why did I behave that way? I don't even understand myself. If you find yourself saying these things, feeling this way, please get the help that you need. There's help out there. There are trauma-informed therapists out there, such as myself, the ones that we have in my agency. But if you're in another state, I'm in Florida, if you're in another state, there are therapists out there that are capable and willing to help you so that you can live a better life. This isn't a life sentence. You don't have to spend the rest of your life suffering over this abandonment wound. Number 7 is neglecting your personal interest. And of course, this one is tied to the other things that we spoke about. You might find yourself giving up hobbies. You might find yourself giving up friendships, giving up the things that you love to do. You might find yourself giving so much time and energy to your other person that it's almost like they become your project and they become your hobby. Again, to the neglect of yourself, to the neglect of what the things that you want, the way that you want to spend your time. And this is where codependency is a lot like an addiction. You almost even start fearing or feeling anxiety when you're not around the person. You might start isolating yourself. You might stop spending time with family members. You might, even if you have kids, you might stop spending time with your kids just to spend more time with your partner. You might change your religious belief. You might be the type of person who used to go to the gym and you stopped going to the gym when you got into this relationship because you just wanted to be all the time together. You wanted to be watching the person. You wanted to know what they were doing. And it's almost like you become obsessed with the person. And because of this obsession, you start neglecting your personal interest. And maybe in that moment, you might rationalize it as, well, we just want to be all the time together. And you might try to paint it in a way like it's a cute thing in your relationship, but it's really just not healthy. It's not, it's what you're really looking for is interdependence. And I'm going to make another video comparing codependence with interdependence. And interdependence is when basically there's two people who are whole and they complement each other, as opposed to thinking, I'm a 50% person, you're a 50% person, and only together and enmeshed do we become whole. You see the difference? So a person who neglects their personal interests becomes enmeshed with their partner, and perhaps you were enmeshed with your parents as well, and you know no other way to be in relationships. So part of your healing journey is to understand the difference between being enmeshed and just being standing side by side and complementing each other in your life, where each of you are adding to each other's life as far as joy goes, support, love. But enmeshment is not a healthy thing. enmeshment is highly dysfunctional, and it's what we would call toxic. And so that would be toxic. Number 8 is enabling unhealthy behaviors from your partner or the people that you're with. This is also something that happens with our parents. Perhaps we don't even want to confront our parents about what happened in our childhood, how they hurt us. Maybe you see them as too fragile, or maybe you're afraid of their reaction at this point. And I just want to say that you don't know that maybe by you talking to them in a way that, I'm not saying for you to be disrespectful. I'm not saying for you to become verbally abusive or abusive in any way, but you letting them know how they hurt you is actually a healthy thing, not just for you, but for them. It gives them an opportunity to perhaps take accountability, perhaps to make amends, perhaps to say, I'm sorry, perhaps to say, thank you for sharing this. I've been feeling guilty for so many years, and I just didn't know how to bring it up. So it does give them an opportunity to do that. And actually not saying anything is enabling their bad behavior, their lack of accountability, and their avoidance of doing their own healing work. So I just want to put that in there so that maybe you could see this from a different perspective. And of course, there are those situations where as an adult, you might talk to your parent about, what they did to you as a child, and they might take no responsibility, no accountability, flip it on you and scapegoat you once more. And that is a possibility that you would need to prepare for. But this could be also done in a very healthy way. So that was just a side note. In codependent relationships, there's often a tendency to enable or excuse our partner's harmful behaviors, such as substance abuse, irresponsibility, chronic underachievement. Like, you might be the person who pays all the bills in the home and the other person doesn't. You might be the person who is super responsible, taking care of the kids, taking care of everything, while your partner is drinking, partying, and not taking care of their responsibility. You might be the person who tries to keep everything calm while your partner is raging and punching walls and screaming. So that's where you start enabling really unhealthy behaviors. And that's where we, by doing that, stunt their growth, stunt the pressure that needs to be put on them in order for them to heal and grow. Of course, that doesn't mean that if you put pressure on them, they're going to choose healing. They might choose to say bye to you. And that would be, again, something that you would need to deal with. But if your worth is up here and their treatment of you is down here, then that will be okay with you. However, if your worth is down here and they're treating you, they're even in their bad behavior still above what your self-worth is, you're going to stay in that relationship. So a big goal in therapy is to raise your self-worth, for you to see yourself as the champion that you are, for you to see yourself as the warrior that you are, how strong you are, that you've been able to endure these relationships. And if you've been able to endure the pain of being invalidated, the pain of being mistreated, possibly even abused, if you've endured that pain, you could definitely endure the pain of growing yourself and of living a wonderful life, living a life by your creation, living a life where you actually do have meaningful, respectful relationships with people who respect your worth, people who value you, people who see you, people who want to hear from you, who want to know, what do you want? What do you like? What do you value? How could I support you? If you're in one of these relationships, you're never going to hear, how could I support you? What do you need? How could I take care of you? You're never going to hear that. You're never going to hear that. And it might, even me saying these words to you, you might hear it and think to yourself, like, I've never heard that. I've never heard anyone say that to me. So that's because your self-worth is so low that you're settling for this type of relationship down here that's in the mud, so to speak. It's in the mud. And listen, I do these videos because I don't want you to suffer anymore. I know that there's a way better life out there that you could create, and this could be like a chapter in your life. We could start creating a brand new chapter in your life, a chapter of transformational growth, a chapter filled with healing, a chapter where you make new connections. However, in order to make new connections that are better for you, new connections with people who love you and respect you, like I said earlier, you will have to go through the rough spot of setting boundaries and possibly losing the people who are not willing to change, who don't want to change, and who don't want to see you change, who are going to make it so hard for you to change. So you will have to go through that time period of almost shedding those people, of shedding those behaviors in you, of shedding those emotions that you have, those fears, and all of that shedding is healing. So you would need to do all this shedding and healing in order to transform. And the only way to have that life that I speak of is truly to go through a transformation. It isn't just a healing. The healing is step one. Transformation is where you learn all the new skills and where you make space for the new life that you're going to have and the people that will be included in that. And that might take some time to be alone. I know that's a scary thought. I know that's a really scary thought for a lot of people who experience codependent traits. Even having 3 or 4 of these traits is very, very painful. So I get it. Believe me, I get it. I am, like I said, I am a codependent in recovery, and I have to be well aware also all the time. So once you heal, it isn't that, oh, I'm healed and it's done and I'm never going to get triggered. No, you will have triggers. However, the triggers won't make you feel so much pain, and they won't last that long. And with every trigger, and you might even have a setback, and with every trigger and every setback, you learn a little bit more, you grow a little bit more, and it's actually all part of your transformation, because transformation is evolution, and evolution is a continuous process. It's about you choosing healing and transformation so that you could continue to evolve throughout the rest of your life. All right, and the last one I'm going to talk to you about tonight, number 9, is denial. Yes, you heard that right, guys. Denial. Denial looks like avoidance. It looks like rationalizing. It looks like making excuses. That's what denial is. And again, and this one, I also understand this one way too well. I lived in denial for many, many years. Denial was fear's cousin, and together they ran my life. Together, fear and denial ran my life. And I'm not surprised if fear and denial runs your life as well, because these are the two parts of us that we use to help us survive and to help us get through the fears that we have, which we're not really getting through anything. We're just basically surviving. So denial is one of the biggest problems people face in getting help for codependency, because after you hear all this will sound so scary that you're like, oh no, I'm not like that. And you'll start making excuses. So it's one of the biggest reasons why people do not go get help for codependency. This means that they don't face their own problems. They don't face the truth. They don't tell the truth about themselves. They don't tell the truth about their partners. They don't tell the truth about how it's affecting their family, their children. More than likely, your children are telling the truth, and you don't even want them to tell the truth. You're telling them to be quiet and don't tell anyone outside the family. You're the person who just wants everyone to be quiet, because that's the only way you could maintain the dysfunction within your family. Guys, and I know this is hard to hear. I know this is really hard to hear. I know some of you might have clicked off by now because you don't want to hear it, especially when we got to denial. But listen, for those of you that are still listening, I'm so proud of you for still listening. It is through these videos that my life also changed. It is through listening to information and videos like this that you're going to be able to become educated on the main thing that hurts you. And again, if I knew I had diabetes, I'd be like learning so much about diabetes. I'll be researching it, listening to videos about diabetes. What is it? How did I get it? How could I get cured? So it's the same thing with a mental health issue. If you have codependency, you should learn, like, how did I get it? What is it exactly? What triggers it? How could I stop it? How could I start getting better? Because codependency is a mental health issue. It's not a diagnosis, but it's definitely a very painful mental health issue that could affect your whole life, and it could affect the life of your children. It could affect your level of success. It could affect your level of joy and happiness, because you're not joyful and happy in these relationships. You're not joyful and happy being codependent while you're at work and you're worried about something happening at home, but you're keeping that a secret because, again, denial and rationalizations. So I just want you to understand that denial is the thing that holds it all together. Denial is where we lie to ourselves. So usually people that have strong denial, they usually keep complaining or trying to fix the other person, but never really deal with themselves. They become the other person's therapist, mommy, whatever you want to call it, and they're so obsessed with fixing the other person. And that's where you start hearing, well, they're not always like this, and they get obsessed with the person's potential. So they're so obsessed with thinking about only the good part of the person that they forget about all the other stuff that's happening. And that's part of rationalizing. That's part of denial, when you start saying, but they're not always like this. If that is a statement that you've heard yourself say, you might be suffering from some type of denial and some type of codependency. You might be obsessed with trying to fix them, with mothering them, leaving them list of things to do, to sending them text messages, reminding them of what they're supposed to be doing, speaking for them, telling them. Part of us over speaking and over explaining is that we're over explaining to them not just what happened and what bothered us, but this is what you should be doing. This is what you should be thinking. This is how you should be treating me. So if this is a situation that you find yourself caught up in, just know that this denial isn't going to make things better. It's only going to make you stay in this relationship longer with no change. And a lot of times you might see change for seasons. And when I say seasons, it might not even be a season. It might be a week or 2 weeks or a day. And then that little piece of change gives you like a glimmer of hope, and you hold on to that. And by holding on to that, you start putting up with maybe months of bad behavior. And then you use this little piece of hope to help you hold on to the relationship, which is really a relationship filled with so much bad behavior, so much disrespect. So I know that this isn't stuff that is perhaps very pleasant to hear. However, it is truth, and truth is the way to your healing. Truth is the first step. Awareness, insight, truth is the first step to knowing that you need help. The first step to knowing that this isn't going to change. If the other person doesn't want change, if the other person continues to behave in ways that are disrespectful, in ways that make you become small, if the other person continues to behave in ways where you're not seen, where you're not heard, where you're even possibly abused, verbally, physically, sexually, where your children are being abused, if you're in a situation where your children are telling you, hey mom, can you leave dad? We don't like him. We're scared of him, or vice versa, then we already know that it's already a bad situation. You don't need more proof. And a lot of times we try to gather up so much proof for years and years and years, as if we need so much proof, as if we need one more thing, just one more time, one more thing. And that's when I'm going to take action. But then when that time comes, you'll find another excuse to not take the action and not make the decisions that you know you need to make. So I hope these 9 points helped you to realize what the signs and symptoms are of codependency. And again, like I said earlier, these signs and symptoms, I said 9, if you have 3, 4 of these signs and symptoms, I already know that your life is in pain, because none of these are good traits to have. None of these are traits that will lead to a joyful, happy, peaceful life. And like my friend Trent Shelton says, you have to protect your peace. You have to protect your peace. You have to protect your soul. You have to protect your mental health, so that you could have the life that you deserve to have, the life that's possible for you. And it's not going to be possible for you if you keep holding on to these relationships and you keep holding on to the way that you're being in the relationships. It's not going to happen. So people, please seek help. Know that healing is possible. Transformation is possible. Your life is waiting for you. So guys, if you need help in this transformational journey, if you need help in your healing journey, feel free to contact me and send me any questions that you may have. My email is in the description below. Just email me any questions you may have, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. And know that the best of your life is waiting for you.